Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 5th edition of Chime In Live with me, the host. And today we have some amazing talent, leading animators and filmmakers within the Caribbean and African diaspora, talking about culture, talking about traditions, how everything is interlaced in the work that they're producing within the Caribbean, within Africa, within North America, and just how they're revolutionizing the entire industry. What was interesting to me in preparing for today, I reached out to my younger ones in the family, and sure enough, my nephew, who is a teenager, is very much interested in the whole animation world, and I had no idea, so he sent in his questions, right? And then my little cousin also. So within this whole field, this whole industry, actually, right in my own backyard, I have a whole set of children who is very much interested in the gaming world, in the cartoon world, in the animation world. But how do we guide them in the right direction to ensure that they are making the best decisions career-wise and they're not falling into the trap of being that broke artist and that cannot sustain themselves in the process? But what was mostly interesting for me was the fact that, as most of you know, I'm also a filmmaker. So my attention was never on the animation side. But trust and believe me, after today, I am going over there. From one of the sources that I pulled, like, it was said that the animation world or the animation industry has the potential of reaching $270 billion by the time of 2020, which we are in 2020. But of course, COVID happened and everything is upside down. Yet, at the same time, everyone is being entertained right now. So on the panel today, everyone is here. We have some amazing people in here. So I would give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. We have Alan, we have 𝗕𝗏𝘁, and we have Milton here, who are coming from Nigeria, Martinique, and St. Lucia. So we have a very eclectic mix representing the African and Caribbean diaspora. So Alan, let's do the honor of telling the people out there a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for inviting me. And my name is Alan Bidard. I'm an animation film director from Martinique, and I've been working in animation for 20 years, and I made various short films, documentaries, music videos, and I also made my first animated feature film in 2015, which was the first feature film from Martinique. And it was really successful. It got 70 nominations and 25 awards. And I also work on animation pilot. It was the same story, an adaptation of the feature film, and right now I'm working on my second feature film.
What type of animation genre would you say that you're specializing in?
I'm working on the type of animation called cell shading, 3D cell shading. So it's 3D animation that look like cartoon. And my animation is mostly for kids and teenagers, and but it's most of the people, even adult people, tend to enjoy it.
Okay, nice. Because I certainly enjoyed it when I saw your films, and I'm like, wow. So you had me sold. Mr. Milton, can you tell the people out there a little bit about who you are?
Okay, my name is Milton Branford, and I'm the managing director and the creative director for Malfinis Film and Animation Studio, Inc. out of St. Lucia. We focus on 2D animation actually, and that's simply because at this junction there aren't many 3D animators here on Ireland, and we also provide training and certification in 2D animation as well. Currently, our production platform, we produce for a lot of agencies such as the 𝗕𝗏𝘂𝐶𝐻, the 5Cs out of Belize. We've done some work with Big Jump Studio out of Canada, and the list goes on. That we get involved. We do have our own in-house productions that we do, but we haven't launched any as yet. We're looking for the funding for that. I think my colleague here was lucky to have been associated with, I think it was a boot camp, which helped jumpstart his movement, I'm thinking. But, we in the Caribbean have yet to get that sort of, well, we in St. Lucia have yet to get that sort of assistance. Apart from that, I am involved in everything that it relates to art and culture and theater. As a matter of fact, I was brought up in the shadow of some real theatrical icons, Roddy Walcott, Derek Walcott, Arthur Jacobs, who were part of an organization. And my dad, Eric Branford, was part of that organization as well. And he took me along to see all of these plays and stuff like that. So I guess that's where I got infused with this need to be in the creative sector. That organization was called the Arts Guild of St. Lucia. Yeah.
Oh, nice. So you see, people out there, we have some really leading filmmakers that are invested for long term in this industry. And last but not least, we have 𝗕𝗏 from Nigeria. Hey, it's nice to finally see you. We've been talking, but never seen each other.
How's it good?
It's good. Introduce yourself to the people.
Hi, I'm 𝗕𝗏 𝗔𝗷𝘂𝗃𝗂𝗰. I represent a company called VX Animation. It's a subsidiary of a broader organization called Vortex Corp, which is a creative content company keen on exporting African culture through animation, comic books, and interactive media. Under VX Animation, we've been in operation for the past 6 years. So it's an honor to sit down with people I consider godfathers of animation. Like I really am honored to, be in the same space and share the same table with you guys. I checked each and every one of you out, by the way. It's amazing stuff. But with VX Animation, we've put out 2 short films since we got started. One is Town Crier, and the other is 𝗕𝗏𝘂𝗃𝗃. And they've done a ton of festivals, collectively over 50 festivals across the world. And worthy mentions will be the Silicon Valley African Film Festival, and also the Kaboom Festival in Netherlands, which is specific for animation. We've had MIFA pitches at the Annecy Film Festival as well, in France, and it's been quite an intriguing journey, making these cartoons. A major way for us to monetize what we do, because of the industry still growing, and investors are still getting to familiarize themselves with the African market in terms of animation content, is by working music videos with various artists. We've had the opportunity of working with some really amazing ones, and also working on commercials as well. For organizations and brands through agencies, and sometimes directly with these corporations. Currently, we are developing an animated series called 𝗕𝗏𝘂𝗃𝗃, which is based off the short film. After following the research to that, we felt like it's something we can develop further. So we're currently writing out the seasons, and have some opportunities towards actually funding it. So currently, that's the the space that we're in. The Nigerian animation industry is quite robust. You know, we're not the only ones doing. There are a ton of us, and you know, I'm happy to have started it early enough to be part of the growing revolution that's happening out here in West Africa, you know, in the animation space. So I'm honored to be here, guys. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome, and thank each and every one of you for agreeing to come on here and just sharing your wisdom with us. And that's what it is. This whole industry that we're in is about collaboration. But one of the things that drove me into doing this right now, because we're just coming out, and I have to say it, we're just coming out of so much trauma within the last several months, from the world being tossed upside down with COVID to the injustices that are played out throughout the world. And now, more so than ever, Black content and Black storytelling is at the forefront, and everyone is looking to have some level of cultural inclusion in a lot of the work that is happening here. And Sumter, with your animation Orange City, you looked inwards towards the African beat, and that's what your whole series is surrounding, giving people that feel into that. I'm going to throw the question out there, and any one of you guys can answer that question. How important is representation in the work that you're doing? How important is that? Anyone can go.
I think we're just waiting for someone to. I think it's very, very important. I'll tell you, we have. I'll give you a little story. So when I opened up my studio, and the young people came into my studio, the first thing they drew was anime characters. They could not, for the life of anything, draw themselves or people that look like them. Now, you have to ask yourself why that is. And the reason that is simply because the Japanese had put out these stories in animation of their culture, of their history. They had tweaked it so it would be acceptable to the global industry. And these were what our young people gravitated to. And so every single one of them that came in, even now, come into the studio, the first thing they can draw for you is an anime character. They have not delved into drawing themselves, and so it's important for us, those of us who have that sensitivity, to be able to guide them, to be able to teach them, to speak to their stories rather than other people's stories. Because the other folks have done that. I mean, we've bombarded every single platform with the European, American stories, the Chinese, Japanese stories, but who's doing our African and Caribbean stories?
I totally agree with you, and that is one of the reasons why we started a festival, to have that level of representation back into the Caribbean, to showcase that when you're looking on screen, you're seeing people not only in front of the camera but also behind the camera doing the work to present these amazing stories and keep the legacy of our heritage going through. Sumter, what was your driving factor? I mean, I heard you speak, I looked at your TED Talk, and I heard you shared your story, why you got involved. Can you just quickly tell the people out there what that means to you?
African storytelling is really not just it's more than just a commercial venture in terms of how it's being commercialized by the West with the Black Panther, and African culture has become like a prop, it's a responsibility to revolutionize the mind of the Black child. It's reinventing the perspective you know, of the motherland and relations within the land, you know. And so when we work, we every single weekend, you know, from you know, the conversations that are being had to the you know, to the environment, to the morals within the story, to the character traits. So we try to make Africa like a free flowing energy that just kind of, you know, passes through the storytelling. You know, growing up as a kid, you know, when we represent figures like our deities, for example, like the Shango and the, you know, the, you know, in our stories, when we talk about those, our parents scold us and make it look like we're entering into something diabolical, you know. But you know, it's not diabolical at all that someone changed water to wine. You know, that doesn't sound diabolical, you know. Or it's not diabolical at all when they buy their kid a Harry Potter book where kids are on brooms flying left and right, and where they have a hat that talks and sorts them into houses, and then the symbols are snakes and lions, you know. But when we talk about our deities, which are our mythological and our spiritual history and background and the core of our existence, you know, as a people, you know, it becomes something that is painted as black magic, you know. So you know, so that already was what inspired our storytelling to creating a genre called spirit fiction. And through spirit fiction, we started with comic books, and we started to make comic books, you know, that were a counterculture to what you see from the Marvel and the DCs and the Image Comics and the Valiant and the rest of them. You know, instead of making original stories that we couldn't afford to start animation. So we started with what was accessible, and with the artists, the digital artists that we could find, and had keyed into the vision. And when we started with these comic books, we started to put out comic books. And when we found out the audience was growing, you know, we started to make animated sequences of these comic books instead of bringing those comic books to life. And that was pretty much the origination and the idea behind African storytelling, you know, for our studio.
I mean, it's powerful.
I was just saying that I like the process. It's basically the same sort of process we're trying to develop here, where your comic books now become your storyboard, and so you just expand on that. This is
Is there anything you want to add, Alan, to your side? Because yours is mostly like futuristic, and I'm not even a sci-fi person, but I was so into. It's not your stuff is not sci-fi, but that's just me, right? I'm categorizing it as such, so I apologize. But it's so action-driven for me. So give me a little insight, because you rarely see people of color in that role.
Yes, it's especially in Martinique. When I grew up, we are nowhere in the manga, the Japanese animation, Western animation. Even as you know, Martinique is not an independent nation, so we are a colony from France. Not exactly a colony, but well, it's the same kind of power. And the thing is that we are not represented in the media, and when we're speaking about animation, we are not visible. So what's happened is that as kids cannot see themselves in the films, they tend to believe that they cannot reach, they can't succeed in to do some things that other kids can succeed to do. And there's a complex of inferiority that appear. And when I made Battle Dream, one thing happened. Is that there were a lot of Martinican people who didn't go to see the film because they believe that as it was made in Martinique, it was not good. And they discovered this later on. But there is this complex. And with my film, I succeed to give to some of them, to show some of them that we could do things here in Martinique with little means, and that was also the first time they could see themselves in animation, and that gives them much more hope, and that was a really different thing, because the Japanese, they really use animation to show themselves, show their culture, show their food, show their history, and we are not in their. We are not Japanese, but we know everything about them, and much more than we know about our own culture. So yes, it's really important to be represented.
Yeah.
It is crazy, and I am really enjoying this conversation because I think it's a discussion that is unison across the board, and we're all change makers, and that's what we're all lobbying for. In the animation industry, cartoon industry, gaming industry, how has that changed, or what changes are you seeing within that industry? How is it evolving? Is it for the better? Is it for the worse? How difficult is it, especially now with COVID?
Okay, so maybe I can answer. I can answer,
Yes.
and my colleagues will follow up. I think that COVID actually presented to the powers that be on all of these islands within the 𝗕𝗏𝘂𝑐𝐻 a truth in relation to where animation can go and why they should focus on animation. Mostly all of these islands are focused on what I call a unicrop economy. So first we had bananas, we had canes, that fell apart. And then we went to bananas in St. Lucia, that fell apart. And then we went to tourism, and many of the islands followed with the tourism thing as basically the sole product or service that they offer. So everything surrounded this. And for many years, other folks, not only me, have been trying to explain the potential, the huge potential of the animation industry, the gaming, app making, that sort of stuff. And that's kind of like, we still struggle with the idea that this is just art, that nobody can make money out of this. That's so there's a lot of focus on the tourism, and some in manufacturing, and even less in agriculture. But COVID revealed the truth, because what happened was the whole world, the tourist world, came to an abrupt halt. Affected everybody's economy. Nobody could travel. Everybody was at home, right? No ships could come into your port. No planes could come into your port. But guess what? With all of that, entertainment picked up. And animators, it was an easy shift to work from home. So animators were still able to, those who were in the mix, who had the capacity, were able to continue working. They didn't have to leave their countries to go anywhere. They didn't need any of the airlines or the boats or any sort of stuff to continue working, and they could have serviced the entire global industry right from their studios or their homes in their country, in the island, on the islands. So tell me, isn't that an industry worth investing into?
Great point. Samter, what do you have to add for that from Nigeria?
I was the same literal direction, because I mean, people even produce. I mean, a lot of a studio is already a quarantine situation, because this is a group of people living in the same space, and hardly do they ever leave that space except when necessary. So for us at the studio, nothing really changed, and we found out that the demand for our services increased, because a lot of things couldn't be shot or with the camera, because a crew is more of a contact situation, because there's a bunch of human beings walking around in a set, but in animation, it kind of just went with the whole quarantine, social distancing, situation, and we were able to find a lot of benefits. I wouldn't say benefits, but we were able to find a lot more opportunity in the chaos that was happening around. Very often situations, people are losing their lives, and it's a really horrible situation. COVID, most definitely. I mean, at least there is the animation provides a solution for a way for us to communicate with each other. It provides a solution for a way for us to connect with our storytelling. A lot of artists started to come with their music video requests because they couldn't shoot anymore. And it kind of just showed the relevance and the importance of the industry. And it's not just a thing about COVID, like when COVID comes and now COVID is going, or even if it's still there, social distancing is becoming way more lenient now. People are out there again, people are shooting videos, people are doing their thing. The relevance is still emphasized. We still get the same level because we had the ability to show people what we could do. Conversations we were having with, artists out here in making Afrobeat on an international scale that we couldn't reach out to before. We were able to have an easy conversation where they were giving us more, not what we asked, but even more projects to handle. So, we has amplified the industry, if anything. I think COVID has had like a yeah, you got to count your words so you don't sound insensitive. But I think COVID had like a sort of it hasn't had a negative impact on the animation industry. I would say that for sure. Yeah.
No, that's good. Alan, you and I were talking before, and you were saying, like, for you, you're such a happy person, and then COVID happened. Your life was not disrupted, but then other people around you were. So how is that? How has that affected you in any way, shape, or form?
The thing is, you get affected by what people feel, because when every media start being very dark and counting the dead, that is really that is really counterproductive for the creativity. But at the same time, as animation is really, it's a very resilient industry. From darkness, we can also create new things, because we can express things, we can show to the world what we feel, and the world can see that, and they can reflect on that and improve their way. And for me, it was the creation of a new film. That was the first time I was creating a film so fast, because it took me 10 days. It's a 5-minute film. And so that was a discovery. That was also a way for me to learn more software, more program, because one thing that happened when the COVID arrived is that a lot of companies that sell program start lowering their price, give a lot of free stuff, and that was a very, very great time to learn more, to discover more, and to extend the possibilities that we had before.
Yeah. So. Someone is asking out there, Fabian is asking a question. He said, is there a venture capital community that seeks out talent and development for animation creators? Anyone have that idea, a response to that?
We wish. If anybody knows, please let me know. One of the questions I think you had was, how do we get funding? And I think that's it's not couched that way, but
more or less in the same.
More or less in the same. And one of the things, the difference between the Caribbean region now and say Europe or the US or Canada, is the incentives and the enabling environment that the artists have there. So, for instance, they can access funding to produce on their projects and to incubate some of their projects. That's a difficulty for us down here. And even when some of those offers are made, it's amazing what the requirements are and how difficult it is to meet those requirements. I think a lot of what we do in the Caribbean is couched in a veil of academia, sorry. And so you've got to make sure that you have on your team somebody who is, how do you call it, with a BA or a master's or something like that to get some PSA work or to get some funding. And the applications are so very complicated. So it sort of deters a lot of really, really great artists. And I want to say that it's not the academia that makes a success out of things like this. It's the persons who have the skill, the drive, the commitment, the entrepreneurs, and the artists who make it happen. So sometimes you need to put someone on there to get some funding because they you get them involved in your stuff because it is required that you have somebody of that stature, that academic stature in there. And they don't do much of the work anyway. It's the great guys on my pipeline. The ordinary animators, if you want to call it that. I don't call them ordinary at all. They're amazing. That make the thing come to life. I have a brilliant team, small as it is, and we're trying to expand it. But I have a brilliant team of guys who do an amazing job. I mean, a production pipeline usually has several persons who are focused on several parts of the job. My guys are all rounders, so they do rigging, they do backgrounds, they do, we do what is necessary to make the job happen. And I'm blessed to have them with me.
We have another. This is so amazing because I guess so many people are interested in the whole animation world. Like the questions is just popping in for y'all. So everything that I prepare is out the window right now because the audiences out there have some serious questions. So the next question is, what are the best strategies to produce your animation with or without funding? And how can I create a pilot for a series with gain interest? Sorry. So how can I create a pilot for a series and gain interest? So those are two questions in one that is out there. So just take it, because I'm not an animator, so I'm just learning from you guys also who have that kind of knowledge to drop.
Any one of my guys, my colleagues here?
Sometimes thinking.
Well, what's the best strategy to produce your animation? What worked for me is you just do it.
Exactly.
You just do it. You start, and the help is gonna come. So far, what I did is that I created, and for example, when I reach 50% or 70% of the final film, the people come and they give a bit of money, so they help the final product to get done. But you always have to prove that you can do it, because for very well, for no reason, they believe that you cannot get the project. They believe that you can't succeed to turn this project into a final film or a final series. So you constantly have to prove. So even if it's just starting with a storyboard or a comics or just a proof of concept, but we constantly have to push forward. Well, this has been my experience, and the funding is gonna come. Sometimes it doesn't, but when when the concept is interesting, you always find people who are going to, if they don't come with money, they're going to help. And you have to shoot international without sacrificing your culture, what makes you special. But you have to shoot international. Find these things that they will want to, that will get them excited, but that is respecting who you are. And
I want to support what you said there, but I also want to put a word of caution out there, and that word of caution has come from my own experiences. Malfinis hard knocks, so to speak, and you can go out there and pitch to networks who are interested. You can go out there and pitch to boot camps who promise to assist you to develop, like my friend here got. But you've got to be very careful. Non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, absolutely essential. If you're going to put your stuff out there, you have to be careful. Do due diligence to whoever you're going to pitch to ensure that they don't plagiarize your idea, which is common out there. And like I said, it's our hard knock experience. We developed a particular series, did the pitch Bible, character designs, names, and the whole storyline and everything, and pitched to two boot camps. One being a boot camp to a festival and another to an organization. That was done in 2016. And in 2018, we never got a reply, so we knew we weren't chosen. And in 2018, a series came out. It's obvious it was a top money series by who it was done for, which mirrored precisely what we presented, right down to the names of two of the characters. Just a slight change, in a word, right? Same storyline, same mix of characters, and same sort of mission. And so, you can't say, since you sent it to this one and that one and the other one, you can't say who actually plagiarize your work or how it happened. But it is something to be aware of, because you get these offers all the time, especially in festivals where, and most of them don't want to sign an NDA. And that's a
problem.
That's a red
problem.
flag. You don't want to sign the NDA, because it means that you have sent them your ideas and somebody there can just take that and run with it. So just a word of caution there.
I mean, that's across the board, not just in the animation gaming world. That's across the board, because as filmmakers, we see that all the time. Even if you're a musician and you're dropping some of your rhythms to some places, whether you're an author, so any kind of creative space or places that you exist in, you have to protect yourself with these NDAs, because when you're an independent artist and you're starving for funding and you're starving for opportunities, that is the first thing. And we have to. I know most of us don't have the opportunity to to hire a lawyer, but you need to expand your network to figure out, if you don't know how to do it yourself, see if there's a local organization that can help you review these documents, because it's very critical. Someone else has asked a question. Samto, do you want to add anything to that before I move on to the next question?
Yeah, the question was structure behind starting your cartoon.
Yeah.
I'll just get your story. First of all, first thing is your story. Don't worry about the animation. The animation, I mean, Netflix these days even accepts, they don't even want you to make anything. They don't want a single drop of production. What Netflix wants is just your developed story. And if they like it, they buy it. So your story is more important. than anything else. And obviously, if you're writing for animation, you have to understand that you're writing for animation. A certain way animated stories, there's a certain format and structure that it goes in. So you watch cartoons and write one. And when you have you don't need to even write everything, just a synopsis with a plot and a good log line. And that's where you start from. You might take it to a studio like ours or theirs, and if they like it, they produce it. So it's story first before anything.
I totally agree. We have another statement out here. Imelda said, "There's an emphasis on supporting Black-owned businesses in the U.S. If we take a Pan-Africanist view, we should tap into the animation gaming talent outside of the U.S. How do we reach you?"
Well, I think most of us are on the internet. You can get our websites, our Facebook pages. You can see what we're doing. You can see if we are right mix or match for what you want to do. You can call us, I guess.
And we can we'll drop all the contacts in the comments.
Yep.
Yes. This is good. And then we have one more here. She said, "Good point about the NDAs." And it says, production company said, "It would be good to have a list of VODs and OTT platforms that support Afrocentric content that the animators and filmmakers can earn decent money for their content."
Agreed.
That takes us into the next part of the questions that I had today. How do you sustain yourselves within this industry? Do you have enough work to do so? Are you finding that within your respective countries that the government is providing enough funding for the industry and our stakeholders are respecting they're respecting the craft in paying for the services? Because I think a lot of people underestimate the amount of work that goes into producing content.
OTT platforms and VOD platforms, there are not a lot of them, to be honest. So most of them are the platforms that are going to pay you the money. I mean, the thing is, making animation isn't like making a movie. Its budget is 10 times, 20 times the budget of a film. So in terms of, it's very difficult to tell an animation studio or an animator to make a film and then sell it on a VOD platform, like license it, because he's never going to get making the film if he doesn't have funding. You know what I mean? So the situation in which animation is being, the business behind animation is, it should be picked up at development stage. That's how it works, in any given situation with the Warner Brothers or, the Disney or, Netflix, who has a strong passion for animation. They just invested in their first African animation with South African studio Triggerfish for 𝗏𝗏𝗏. So, with those kind of situations, they give you the money up front and tell you, go take this couple $1 million and go make this movie or go make this series. It's all paid for from the start. So for an animation studio, except if you're making bite-sized content, like snackable content, like 5 minutes, and then you have a series of 5-minute show, and you want to, then there's a platform that's interested in monetizing that, like maybe a Facebook Watch, for example. If they ever get to that point where they start licensing content, then fantastic, But if it's going to be a movie,
I think HBO also does little.
HBO does that too. That'll be pretty cool, But if it's a situation where it's like the traditional way, like a 20 minutes by 13 episode show, or half-hour show, or 2-hour movie, or 1 hour 30 minutes movie, it's almost virtually impossible to have an animation studio produce that, because the risk is too much. After spending all those millions getting that project to completion, if you don't sell it, you could commit suicide. Because it's a very long process. We're talking about like 2 years. I would love him to even tell us on his actual journey, Mr. I wish his names could show.
Bidar.
Milton.
Oh, Milton.
No.
Okay.
Noted. Talking about his movie process, because I'm so intrigued. I have two friends that have made movies. One's in Cameroon, French-speaking Africa as well. And it's something about French people and animation. There is a power, there's a bond between French people and animation. I tell you that. You know, they're always at the forefront of it. That's why the biggest animation film festival in the world is in France. You know, it's in, you know, that's Annecy. So yeah, Bidard, Mr. Alien. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I really want to know, like, that process. What was it like for you? I want to know the hustle, so people get to actually understand that it wasn't a piece of cake. It wasn't like, oh, I just made a movie and, like all these film festivals, because that was a journey,
That's going to be a story. I followed up on it.
Isn't it amazing?
He deserves
his work is amazing, I'm telling you.
Well, to make those films, the problem in Martinique is that we have a certain amount of 3D artists, but we don't have enough to make a studio. And the other problem is funding. We don't have the money. France, continental France, have a set of grants to create films. They have a system that really help filmmaker to create films, to receive money between films. But this system work when you comply with the idea of France of what is a French person. And a French person is literally a white person with a white culture. And when you bring your Martinican culture, your Caribbean culture, that's not what they want to see. When you're trying to represent yourself positively, that's not what they want to see. So it's really difficult to tap into this kind of funding. So what happened to me is that I had to create I had to create 5-minute proof of concept to get some investors on board. But it was getting more difficult. So I create a 10-minute and 15-minute, and I realized that I could make the and at 80%,
promise,
and at 80% of the product, there's some local government funding that helped me, but well, they help the product, not the project. So it's really and I had to do it myself, which is generally not what happened in a studio. A studio work with a team, so it's really different from what people expect. It took me 7 years. So it's a long time to get to
that's
the
the number. That's literally the number that. Imagine 7 years,
Yeah.
7 years.
I mean, thank you, Mr. Alien. You're a superhero. You're a superhero, man, and I mean that with utmost respect, with complete respect, man. It's so not easy. It's so not easy, but because people like you do what you do, it gives the confidence to take those steps.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
What he said.
No, I mean, I'm stunned for words, because really and truly, anything creative is a labor of love, and people don't get it. They think it's just this. It's just put that little figure stick and make it work. But they don't understand that it takes a whole team to make that little figurine possible. And Alan, your work is amazing and is such an inspiration. And someone had the question, how did you fund that you made? They wanted to know, how did you fund the 80%?
The 80% is mostly funded from my own money, with my time, with because it takes time, so it gives me enough time to find the funding from other contracts that I get, because I can't work full time on the film. I work on smaller film, and I teach, so I take a part of this money and I put it on the film. So that was really most of the money that was put on the film, and the rest is sponsorship, because when the private sector see you do something like that, they tend to support you much more than the government, strangely. And the government come because they don't want to be left behind. So they want to participate. Because as 80% is done, it means that the film is going to be released, and they really want to be a part of that. So everybody come in the end because they saw you do all the effort, and
so you kind of shame them into action.
But that isn't it. Which one of us here have
exactly.
I love it. Which one of us here have not invested our own sweat, equity, and our money to make our projects possible? I know I funded my 2 films personally, and I'm also funding the film festival. So it's like, once you believe in your own dream, you have to put it forth, because no one else is going to invest in it for you. And then, as Alan said, they will come eventually, because they do not want to be left on the sideline.
Exactly.
I mean, it's the same with Malfinis Film and Animation Studio. I mean, we started off as a theater group when we did a couple of projects for radio drama, actually, for an NGO out of New York. And so we did like 365 episodes of a radio drama called 𝗕𝗶𝗄𝗰. And in fact, that radio drama was sort of like a test piece, I would call it, and they developed a process by which radio dramas would be made, and that NGO took that to I think they took it to the Philippines and some places in Africa and stuff like that, based on what we did here in St. Lucia. And it was then that I realized that nobody was really recording or documenting what was happening in theater, and wanted to go into film. So we started off in film, and then once we got into film, then we started to realize, and I loved animation. I mean, to this day, it's a major consumption of mine, comics and animation up to this day. So I realized the nexus, that we're into film, and the opportunity for doing animation was right there. And I think it really became a reality when I began talking to Toon Boom Animation, and Toon Boom is kind of like the leader in the 2D animation world. And so, they embraced what we were trying to do, and through a couple of grants, one from CASIP St. Lucia, one from IDB, we were able to get the equipment, etc. But primarily, when we started off, I only had like one computer, which was mine. And I got one other, and then kids came in, and they used to just share the computers, back and forth, and do the training and stuff like that. And who had a laptop would come in with their own laptop and play around and stuff like that, until we got the funding, which allowed me to expand. A lot of it is the brick and mortar is basically my cash, like you were saying, and to build out the studio. And so we're here today because of sheer determination, to be honest.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. We have a comment here, or a question. How can Caribbean consumers or viewers help out to develop the animation industry? And I think that goes across the board for both Africa and the Caribbean.
Anybody want to go? I don't want
to. Well, there's many possibilities. There's crowdfunding that everybody knows, that turns the consumers into investors, but also to support the product made by Caribbean people when those products are out. Because that is what help us to be seen. That's what help the investor to see that oh, maybe there's something interesting there, and because in every country, whether you take Japan, North America, or South Korea, it's really the support of the people in the country that really push the animation industry to the right direction. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at India, for instance, a lot of the animation studios that exist now, they started off doing a lot of the Indian culture and history, just like Japan, and the government came in and did some support and stuff like that, and you know, they were able to develop the industry. I mean, now you know, they're one of the leaders in producing animation, not for India, but for the rest of the world. So you know, it's really our people and our governments that need to see this, recognize this as a viable economic option for a lot of artists. You see, we need to stop putting artists in a box and saying, "Oh, these guys are just having fun," and you know, it's good to buy one or two pictures from them and put up on our wall, but they're never going to make any money. That's not true. That's a fallacy. This industry is, as you said, is going to 270 billion. Okay, and it's only going to get better. The reason why? Every film that comes out now, unless somebody's a real traditionalist and they you know, the box office type, most of those films will have some form of animation in them. It's just, I mean, it's just going to the point where even some films won't even really have the real actors. The real actors will simply just be the voices again. You look at Spider-Man, for instance. See all of that action that we see there? That's animation. A lot of that action is animation. So it's only going to get better. And we also have to understand that animation is not just for entertainment. And that's another thing that our people don't realize. You have the use of animation in medicine, in training. You have the use of animation in architecture. You have the use of animation in crime scene work as well. You have the use of animation in communication and education. So there's so many varied areas in which animation is now considered to be very important, a very important component of what's happening. So somebody learning animation now is not just doing it to produce film or cartoons. It gives them a viable option for any area, any career that they want to go where animation is required. So, you know, we have governments, the governments, like for instance, I mean, it's in its infancy in the Caribbean, but it is growing exponentially
and very quickly.
And thanks to the governments like the governments of Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, they have seen the potential for this, and they have invested in this. I think I have something here, which is amazing. Right, in for Jamaica, for instance, they developed the Youth Employment in the Digital Animation Industries. I think they call it the 𝗕𝗍𝗂 program. As their vehicle, and the partners trained and equipped young people in animation skills. In April 2017, 𝗕𝗍𝗂 launched the Creative Industries Education and Employment Project. And this project trains youth in animation and prepares them for employment in the international animation market. And so that's strange, you know, that for us, that a government would see the need. And this is coming out, I think, from the Prime Minister's office. The Prime Minister has decided that this is going to happen. I mean, in Trinidad, for instance, you have Jampro, no, Jampro is
The Jampro is in Jamaica.
Jamaica. You have Export TT, which is, and they're pushing the animation down there. You have
Anime Carib
you have
in
Anime
Trinidad.
Carib
Mhm.
in Trinidad. That's the one, the leading. Well, I think one of the two. I don't want to create a thing, but the leading.
So which is better or not?
No, I don't want to do that.
They're both doing
but
extraordinary work.
right. And for instance, I think I have something here on that as well. At the opening of the 2018 Anime Carib Animation and Digital Media Festival, it is one of the two of the region's animation and film network gatherings. The Trade and Industry Minister, the Honorable Paula, I think it's 𝗕𝗂𝗂𝗰𝗵𝗂𝗎𝗄𝗂, encourage local animators to access funding and collaborate with the government on building capacity and developing the animation industry in Trinidad. Listen to this. It's not the other way around, which is usually what happens, where we begging the government
They saw the potential.
They see the potential. So they are now telling the artists, work with us to do this. And they have actually done quite a bit. And then, this is what we need. We need an enabling environment. We need, first of all, we need among the studios in the Caribbean, going back to your point of collaboration, there just is no way that we can do this if we don't begin to collaborate. I mean, Malfinis has been trying its best to create this sort of collaboration using a cluster model. And we just see that as the way of the future. We need to do that and to create this opportunity so that we can become competitive out there. If we don't do that, the insular nature of our current situation is not going to make much of a dent in the global animation industry. So we need to collaborate, and then we need our government to provide us with enabling environments, support, work with the studios, because it doesn't make sense that you go training a lot of kids and expect that when you've done with the training, they're going to go out there and become freelancers and suddenly make a lot of money. Some probably will. Let's say you train 30, 2 might have the wherewithal, the facility, the finances to move forward. The others are going to be frustrated. You get a job today, none, 2 months, 3 months, nothing. They're going to go work somewhere else, in a gas station, in a supermarket, something, and that investment would be lost. Yeah, and it comes right back to square one. So you've got to support the studios themselves. You've got to create incentives to the studios. You've got to work with the studios so that they can absorb, they can grow structurally and capacity, where they can grow and absorb those trainees that are coming out. That if you go as far as creating that training regime, you can't just leave the studios and say, okay, they're private sector, let them sink or swim.
No.
And we all know the history of governments all over who decide to replace the private sector with institutions that they run. That doesn't really work. It's nice and shiny for a bit, and then it falls to pieces because the entrepreneur, the creativity, the drive comes from the private sector.
I just want to point it out that the hour flew by so quickly. So if you guys bear with me, we can stay on just a little bit longer to finish it up, because this is such an interesting topic. But if you have to leave, I can respect that, because the questions are coming in still. And it is so true. Part of my biggest initiative is about connecting and collaborating. And that's the reason why I reached out to SAMTO. I reached out to the African Animation Group over in Nigeria. I'm expanding my reach, and I'm not even an animator, but I feel that as a Black creative within this space, we all have to reach out and support each other in one way, shape, or form. There is some amazing young, emerging animators in Grenada that I am watching and I am looking to mentor, and I'm trying to figure out funding that we could even have some level of exchange program. And Somto and I spoke about that, some kind of exchange program where my animators can possibly go over or collaborate with him and his studio in Africa to give that global reach and that global experience to cross-pollinate our cultures and our respective cultures and traditions to strengthen the kind of stories that we're telling. But I'm only one person. I have big dreams and big visions. And my family say no more money investing in my dreams, right? But I need stakeholders to see this as a viable something. Something you wanted to say something to that?
Yeah, I mean, collaboration is key, but I mean, and you know, such programs are always a great way for cultural diversity and, you know, cultural exchange and understanding, you know, the way different things are done in different locations. But one thing that is primary to the industry and where it is sustainability.
Yeah.
You know, there are many studios that come up and 3 years they disappear, you know, and they come up in 2 years they disappear, you know, and that's a trend, or they're quiet for a long time, or many studios that come up and become agencies, you know, forced to become agencies and not creative studios that develop content. And then we find out that more often than less, the African narrative in the told through animation is stifled, because African animation studios exist, but they're not doing storytelling. You know what I mean? So, and then the few of the studios that are doing storytelling are, you know, so collaboration is key, you know, just like I saw in the previous question where she was like, associations coming together. Yeah, that is definitely direction. Looking at different studios and having a yellow pages of some sorts of different studios across, you know, the Africa and the diaspora, and, you know, seeing studios that kind of have matching stuff in terms of the style of studio's creativity, because every studio has a style. You know, because of the artists that that form that studio. They have a certain, like, his studio does the cell shading, Mr. Alien. You know, Mr. Milton, looking at what I can see behind, that's very Cartoon Network inspired. You know, that's very you know, you can, you know, and which I can see my producers work in my studio. Collaborating with Mr. Milton will be very easy, because we have similar styles in the way we handle our production. You know, and looking at his style, I can already tell that for Mr. Alien, Ant Hill Studios here in Lagos would be very, very easy to collaborate with Mr. Milton, because they work in the same style as well, and they have a similar pipeline. So it's picking out 3-4 studios that come together and map out a period of, and say that within this 4 years or within this 3 years, this is how we're going to develop this film.
Absolutely.
And this is our route to cinema, you know. So sit down, not just the producers, but also sitting down with distributors. Who's distributing this movie? Because before you even get into the production edge, you need to talk about the business. You know, you need to get out the distribution. You need to get out. So if we're investing in this, you know, and who's gonna also play executive producer role? Who's gonna just put
the money
in that money that's gonna serve as base finance? You know, you don't. Exactly, you know, and it's not exactly putting too much, like a couple million, like millions of dollars, or, you know, thousands of pounds or naira, whatever the case may be. It's pretty much giving a base budget to these studios, and then these studios invest themselves. So everybody has shared interest. The 4 studios, the distributor, and the executive producer. And when they form those small, it's kind of like a tourist cell. You know, they do that. They form, it's self-independent, you know, and once they form those small pockets, you know, of groups that are developing things, you know, each studio can, with their group, is developing their movie, and then they line it up, and that creates value for the industry. Because unless we're making that kind of money, there'll always be an unemployed animator.
That's
you know,
right.
and as long as there's an unemployed animator, there'll always be, I want to study something else in school that's not animation. There's always be, my mother doesn't want me to study animation because I ain't gonna get a job. You know, so just like Mr. Milton said, it is integral that the studio see. because the success of the studio is the success of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the moment that studios continue to disappear every 2 years, every 3 years, every 4 years, disappear, you know, or disappear into working on stuff for telecommunications and banks and all that stuff till they get lost in it, because it's pretty good money as well, and it's sustainable money. And the older we get, it's so amazing that I'm sitting down with veterans that still have my passion. I'm so honored to be part of this, because you know I want to be like these men when I grow up. You know, I literally want to be like the both of you. You know, I see myself. This is my vision. This is my future. You know, and I appreciate the fact I'm here actually having this discussion, because, you know, because a lot of
let me give you a little thing here. I kind of wish that I could take a few more years off of what I have now with the passion that I have. You know? No, but
most
really,
definitely, you know,
really,
yeah.
You know, we need to talk, because, like I said, coming off of the first attempt at a cluster, which was funded by 𝗕𝗵𝗂, I have gone much further in developing the process, and so we have a pretty tight and really well laid out plan for clustering of 4 or 5 studios to begin with the potential to expand. And you know, I also with Grenada, we've done some training in Grenada. We've spoken we've kept in touch with the animators there as well, and so it's a really nice place to start the discussion on getting. As a matter of fact, we have a subsidiary registered in Grenada that has not been launched. That has not been launched because I guess in these Caribbean islands, you're in the project, and as soon as elections come up, then you know what happens.
Yes, you're in demand.
Or they forget your project and they move on to other stuff. So it's something that we need to discuss. I like the discussion here. It's in line with our thinking, and I think the connection that we have here, we should maintain, and we should see what can come out of that.
Yeah, I really appreciate this, because I mean, I know we're a little bit over time, but we may have to just have a part 2 to this, because there is so much to unpack regarding this industry, and because the whole space in what we're doing, all of us are kind of starved for the same thing. Funding is number one. We have big dreams, we have great ideas, but we cannot continue to sacrifice our livelihood and our well-being for the sake of creativity. At some point in time, those of us who have families will give up on us and say, enough is enough, you know, because we are fighting for a cause that is bigger than us. We are servants, in my opinion, to this industry, but at the same time, we also have to make sure that our livelihood and our well-being is taken care of. And I am truly honored to have you guys here. Before you leave, I know someone said that Roger said that he is excited to develop the animation industry in Grenada. Sam is doing voiceover. Someone had asked a question about.
Does Roger have a last name? Let me see.
Roger Joseph.
Ah, yes. He was one of those we trained, I think.
And you know what's interesting about this is, even within my journey of establishing the film festival in Grenada, I think I had to earn my respect with the guys there to let them know that I'm in this for the long haul. Because for me, it's knocking on doors and saying, this is a platform for you guys to showcase your work just the same. Basically, what we're doing right now, exchanging conversations, is the same thing. And I cannot do it by myself. I need content creators to showcase their work, just as how content creators need a platform to have their work being seen. So we go hand in hand. So I am happy to hear that they are looking to develop the animation industry home, because then I can link him to some of the younger guys who are reaching out to me for a hub and a space to do the things that they're doing. Someone said, what? local Grenadian animators here really enjoying the stream. Okay, that's correct. That is saying that. So a lot of them are actually coming in, and they're engaging these questions. Oh God, I lost my train of thought because I had something to say. Voiceovers. Because what we feel, we're talking about animators, right? And that's what you guys are doing. You guys are creating the images and all these things. But at the same time, there are different tiers because you need writers, you need voiceovers, you need actors. Can we just talk a little bit about that before we kind of conclude this part? Because there's a lot of people out there who might say, I cannot draw, but I can lend my other support in different ways. How does that work? Is there space for additional people in animation work and within your own individual studios?
Yeah, absolutely. Our studio is built on being self-reliant. And so we have our own audio studio. So we do our own voiceovers. And remember, I'm coming from a theater background, so I do have actors, voice actors, and actors who I can tap into. So that helps a lot because obviously if you have to go to another studio, that ups your cost. And so we are able to do that, all of that in-house. If you have a great story, and I like what my colleague has said, that no matter what it is, it must have an engaging and a great story. The story is the key. And then you enhance that story with the animation. But you also have to have the voice actors who can bring out the emotion. Because remember, you're not seeing them. So they tell the story, they share the emotion through their voice. So you've got to have voice actors who are able to do that. I mean, we have some voice actors that can change their voice and you wonder, what the hell, one
Some
time,
voice actors that can bring celebrity to the project,
bring celebrity to the project. And so they are very important. And the point you made is so key, that animation is not just the drawing. It's so many different parts. You have persons who do the background. You have persons who do the technical stuff, like for instance the rigging, because you got to get those pictures to move, right? So that's very technical. You have people who do the in-betweens and who do the character designs. And so you have to find out what the strength of each animator or each artist is, and then channel that into your production pipeline. And so there are so many. I mean, post-production, for instance, it doesn't have to be an animator who does post-production, right? But we do post-production right there, and we have a young chap who is brilliant at doing post-production. And so we call on him first when it comes to post-production. If he's not available at the time, let's say, God forbid, he's sick, there is still someone else in the studio, my lead animator, 𝗕𝗿, who is able to do that. So you just kind of understand that it's not just one job. It is several jobs working in a production pipeline.
So I know you, 1 second, Alan, I'm so sorry. I know you guys you had a call for writers for your studio. Are you going to extend it to people who are non-Nigerian, if there are people who are interested in writing stories?
Yeah, definitely. Our stories, we had a sit down in 𝗕𝗏𝗂𝗃, South Africa last year in October. And we were fortunate to have like a meeting with Warner Brothers. And fortunately, before that, at MCM Comic Con in London, we had met some of the people from Warner Brothers. And that conversation has just been ongoing. And it means nothing really, because I've been meeting these people. It's been a long time. Meeting these people, is not a prerequisite anything. You get what I mean? There's no excitement. We're just like, yeah, okay, we're going submit, guys. So I mean, we had that discussion in October, and it's just now we really start developing it, because we don't pay attention to that. We don't base our success or what we plan to do with our studio by a single conversation with someone who has like 100 more stories on his table, or maybe 5,000 more stories on his table. But we're always going to push that conversation, but we're not pushing the conversation waiting for a handout from the West, so most definitely our stories are very diverse. They're not, some of our stories are not set in even in Nigeria. It is set in South Africa. We have 𝗕𝗏𝗂𝗁𝗂𝗃 king, which is set in Nigeria. We have stories which are abstract, like sci-fi, space. So we're developing currently 5 stories that we're happy for people writing to come through and blow us away. It's at development stage, so we're not looking for people to come write scripts or the full thing, but just give us outlines. We have a base budget for that. So, if we like your portfolio and your excerpts, we've received quite a number of people. But yeah, we're still open to more writers who are excited, to write with a Nigerian studio, or, just try to do something, diversity. We're very open to that.
Okay, great. I'll share the information. Alan, you were going to say something, and then I want to address this one comment before we leave. I think is very critical, because for me, everything that I do is about the business. But we have so much to talk about. We haven't even gotten to the business of animation yet. And that question was posed. So can you state what you were saying, and then I'll address this question, and we can conclude then.
There's a lot of things that we can do, because, well, when we make a film, for example, we have to do a temp voice for the character, for the animation. So we do this ourselves, and there's a lot of things that we have to know how to do. But the idea is not to develop, is not to put our voice in the film. It's to allow other people from our community to be able to put their voice, to develop their career too, because what we want for animation is that it's become a drive for other artists to be able to express themselves and express our culture too. So it's very important that it doesn't stay just the effort of one person or just a small group, but it really allow all the other kind of artists, writer, voice actor, and musician and mixers to express themselves. And I feel that it's how we are going to become strong, and it's how we are going to become a necessity in the region.
Okay, I totally agree. Claire Grant made a statement. She said the business end of animation is what is missing from this conversation. As a purchaser of content, seems as if there is not a lot of thought in that area.
I think tonight I'm going to join the live stream to start with, because I think we've kind of discussed. Before you discuss the business, you discuss the challenges that affect the business, and I feel like we've addressed that quite, carefully. We're studios, and our job is to ensure that the production comes out at the optimal quality. The business department is in making sure that our clients are happy. Now, except if what we can do in terms of the business of animation, it's supposed to be easy, in terms of attending film markets. There's the MIPCOM in France, which is the biggest film market in the world. There's the DISCOP in Africa, which happens in 3 African countries. It happens in South Africa. It happens in Dubai. It happens in Ivory Coast. And these markets, you attend them, you spend thousands of dollars to be there, because it's not free to get an invitation to the club. It doesn't just fall in your lap. Sometimes to get a producer or a seller ticket, it's about $2,000, and that's minus you flying there and paying for your accommodation, you know. And we're talking about a studio that hasn't earned $1 yet, or maybe a studio that's just earning money from services. So the business end is quite difficult to talk about when you haven't addressed the challenges, because when you overcome those challenges, the business becomes an easier conversation. But, you know, going back there, you know, when you face these hurdles and then you attend finally at getting into, sorry, TIA, you know, and you attend finally and getting into, you know, any of these markets, you begin to find out that demands that they demand from an African studio, which is in its development stage, are things that, you know, are very difficult for us to provide, because they just don't sit down and look at your pitch documents, and, you know, they're looking for pilot episodes. Now, the time that it takes a studio to produce a pilot episode, you have to consider that they're paying that in salary and time. So assuming a pilot episode is going to take a studio 6 months, how is the studio going to afford that when the studio is not funded by government grants, or when it's busy working on services to satisfy clients? So, you know, the content side of animation has to do with a studio being stable and the right resources and infrastructure around the studio enabling that business to succeed. And, you know, until that is addressed and, you know, worked out, you know, there is no business if there is no entry, you know. So that's my opinion.
Yeah. So what he said, you know, I understand a question though, in terms of just a little more. The business of the business is important. So
Business of the business is
yes,
important.
the studios need to, and this is perhaps across the board where we do have a problem with understanding our worth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not only in animation; it's in a lot of stuff. We quarrel sometimes when we see these persons come down and get these contracts with so much money. Government pays them to do consultancies, etc. And when we as regional people who are equally qualified, and notwithstanding the fact that they come to ask us questions and write a paper from what they ask us, we as regional consultants are not given the same consideration. So, you know, you go in and you put in your thing and they'll tell you, oh, that's true. Why are we paying these guys so much money? But they never said that for the Europeans and the American consultants. And part of it is because we don't know our value. So we figure the least I can charge will probably work for me. And so we constantly underprice our services. And so we need to understand the business and understand what we do, what it costs, and how we can charge for it. And so I would say that one of the things that the studios need to come together and learn a lot about is the business of the business. I remember trying to get that done in the first cluster attempt that IDB was trying to get going, and that was part of the problem. I mean, we can say to you what the business overall is worth. I can tell you what the cost advantage. I think I took this one here from Export TT, where they said that a 22 to 24 minute episode would cost between 200,000 and 250,000 in the US and Canada to produce,
Mm-hmm.
and between 250,000 and 300 in Europe. In India, the production cost works out to be about 60,000. And in Trinidad and Tobago, that's what they're saying, approximately 62,000 to 65,000. It means that you're competitive if you have the right quality and you can maintain those prices, those wages, to keep the prices low. But I think that the industry as it is now in the region is too fragmented, too insular, to be able to meet some of those goals. There, I think that we need to, as I said, come together.
We do.
and we need to understand the business of the business and work alongside. You know the crab in the barrel scenario that we have within the region. We need to set that aside and start working on a collective understanding of how we're going to charge. There'll still always be, competition to some degree, but we want it to be ridiculous competition.
Exactly, because sometimes you're charging $100, for the lack of a better example, to do maybe 1 minute. I'm not saying $100 is a minute of animation, please.
Yeah.
I'm just giving an example.
As an example, disclosure, yeah.
No, it's true.
I'll just give an example.
It's true. It's crazy.
For $100, and someone out there is charging $10.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do about that? And when it's done, you end up seeing the animation looks like something that a 5-year-old did, and and it only gives the out. Because what happens is that perspective of that is that African animation is not quality. African animation is not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
African animation it gives a negative light because the people that are supposed to pay premium refuse to pay premium to the studios that deserve it, and then they keep on paying peanuts to the amateurs that are just looking to earn a buck. They don't do this for the culture. They don't do this for the standard. They don't do this to be Michael Jordans in the field. They just do this for for the tech, for the next for the next meal, for the next project.
We have a saying down there, buddy. It's called bonks and draw. They just do it for the bonks and draw. Immediate cash, just to go buy a couple of. That's
immediate cash. Exactly.
Yeah. So, Alan, do you have anything to add to that before we wrap up this first session? Because we have to come back and continue on with this discussion.
Well, same as they were saying, the price in animation that we have is definitely not equal to what we see for mainstream animation in Europe and North America. The demand, if we go where the demand is, when you go to 𝗦𝗫𝗺, for example, they're going to demand a lot of animation that is universal, white, mainstream, and so you do understand that, well, they're not really ready to fund what you do. There is also, for me in Martinique, what has worked so far for me was to go where there is demand, and it's in social film to inform people about, for example, AIDS, suicide, hurricanes, disease. So there's a demand there in the health industry. So they have a need, and they're going to pay because they have this need, but they're not going to pay because they want to support animation or they want to push the animation art. And that's why when you want to create a story like what you see on Netflix, a story that is really for entertainment, the price is going to get reduced because you, at the same time that you have to create this product, you have to prove that you can do it, and it can be good, and or even better than what other people do in mainstream animation. So it's difficult.
Yeah, tough.
It is. Creativity, the creative industry, it is difficult across the board, but there is a lure that drives us to the field in whichever capacity, from music to dancing to creating films, animation, gaming, name it. There is just something about it that draws us. And not only are we investing our own hard-earned money, but we also invest our time. And I think time is the biggest currency when doing the type of work that we do. And it is true that we need to be compensated accurately for it, because our work and our talent is equally as valuable as the other or the next person out there. We have to start being respected for that and not taking advantage. And like Assumpto said, there have to be some level of a universal standard that we, within our specific region, is accepting. And this division amongst creatives need to stop. And people have to recognize that there are different levels of experts and experiences that come with it. And you cannot expect someone who is just beginning, who does not have the training, to be compensated the same for someone who's invested a lot of time, effort, and money into creating this and making this their lifestyle and their business. So I had one more final parting, and then we can conclude. What will you tell that young animator listening to you right now? Because I know my nephew is listening, and he wants to convince his mom that he needs to be an animator. What will you tell that next generation coming up right now?
Go for it. Don't let anything stop you. Go for it. It's the only thing. You know, if you want to be an animator, if you want to be a digital graphics person, if you want to do gaming, whatever you want to do, whatever your passion is, never let anybody, anything, any situation direct you away from that. Go for it. You listen, you can only get where you want to go after you make that first step and follow with the second step and the third step. Can't sit on the fence and wonder, how am I going to get over there? You got to get off the fence, take the hardships, because we did, and then we're still here and we're still going through hardships, but we're making a dent. And so I would say go for it. And I'm certain that my colleagues might say the same.
Alan?
Be courageous, be brave, never give up, never give up. You're gonna fail a lot, but failure is the way to success. So you have to, if you fall, you have to stand up and continue, and you're going to succeed. Work pays off. It doesn't pay off when we want, but it's pay off later, and it pays off. So it's difficult. The most difficult thing is when we are doing it, other people can consider that we are doing nothing, that what we're doing is not really something useful. So it's difficult, but in the end, these same people were saying that when they see the result, the people recognize that there is something special. So it's a journey. You need to have the passion in the beginning, because without the passion, this is torture. But if you have the passion, go for it. And it's really, really great to be able to wake up every morning knowing that you're going to do a job that you love.
Yeah, absolutely.
Assumpto? Parting words.
Yeah, write a story that is going to inspire you to never stop. To never stop. So really, what keeps you going are the stories that are trapped in your head, the ones that just keep you awake. And if you really do love animation, be excited to do it for everybody and anybody. You know, don't feel like you have to put a burden on yourself to tell your story first. Develop a passion for storytelling through animation, and once you have that secure, you're going to be fine.
On that note, no, this is amazing. I just wanted to say again, thank you to each one of you for coming on and just having this enriching, enlightening conversation about the industries and how important representation matters within the work that we're doing, to stay true to what we believe in, and also being a living testimony that there is a career path that you can take beyond the traditional ways that people are teaching. But we also know that there's another component, which is the business side of this business, which we can come back and discuss. And that government officials, stakeholders, investors need to start recognizing what is built in within the region, within the non-traditional markets like the US, like the Asian market and those places. And we need support. We really need support to take our dreams into reality and make it into something that is longevity and sustainable. So to everyone out there, thank you for sticking with us for an extra 40 minutes. And I appreciate each and every one of you, and see you on the other end.
Thanks for having me, and thanks, wonderful conversation, and guys, we must stay in touch. You
all have everyone's information, and definitely we will talk, because I will have you guys on the panels coming up later on. So on that note, we like to say enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Ciao.
Very much.